Welcome everybody to ScrubCast. I don't really have a full intro right, as much as I have sort of an idea about what we're going to do here. We're going to change things up as time goes on, and this is more of like I like to say everything's in beta, and almost nothing I build gets out of beta, so we're going to just have to deal with this. But we are going to be interviewing players, the average player, the average person who jumps into Overwatch, who plays competitive. We're not going to deal with quick players, but we're going to deal with people who are, like to say, casual tryhards. What we are going to do is just to kind of cap this off, or to start the whole ScrubCast thing, is I have one of the higher ELO players, one of the highest ELO players right now, as a regular player in our group, and he's a young fellow, but he's got a good mind on him, understands the game very, very well, and we're going to get kind of his opinion on not just the current meta, but your own ability to work within that meta. Because a lot of players, especially at the higher ELO in comparison to the lower ELO, see the game from a completely different light, and so they may say, oh, well, just run this, or just do this, or all these kind of things. But we know that there's going to be a large variety of experiences from every single part of the Overwatch spectrum. And so we're going to look at them in terms of the experience, less alone the actual, you could say, fairness of Overwatch. Here within the Scrub Club, we truly believe that the system works. We've had many people test it out. We've had many new accounts, many new players go through things. And so even though the system doesn't feel good sometimes, it's fair. It works as is, and we're just going to go off of that assumption that it works. I'm sorry, even for the higher ELO players out there who go, oh, I got placed in Masters when I should have been GM, and the matchmaker's terrible, and I got to deal with Masters in my top 500 games. Sheer. But there's no...
Wow.
Yeah, you're that Masters in the top 500 games. But
I am.
It doesn't really matter, because what we're dealing with is the majority of players, and the majority of players actually have a fair game, or at least from our perspective and our testing and all that kind of stuff. And so that's going to be the assumption from all of these podcasts here on out. I will be... I got to just close my chat too, also look at it. I know I will. I will be, of course, attempting to rein in the conversation too. For most of the higher ELO players, when I end up bringing in lower ELO players in here, they may talk about stuff that they don't like or whatever. And usually, as we know from any type of player versus player battle, if you don't like something, the person that just doesn't care about whether you like it or not and just wins with it is the one that's going to be better. And so again, all these assumptions about fairness within the thing, we're not going to worry about. We're going to be worried about the current meta. We're going to look at solutions that you have to certain problems. I'll be asking Sheer a lot about what he does to resolve certain issues that he has within games. So if he's got people that throw, whatever, what are the current options that he has for those things that are happening? I know I'm mumbling a little bit and going over myself, but that is what it is. We've got a lot of different things to talk about here. So that being said, I'm going to put Sheer on the spot. He is kind of our bid Masters player. Would you like to do a little introduction about what hero you play, how much Overwatch you've played in the last while, and kind of your general feeling about the current state of Overwatch, whether you think it's great, terrible, all those kind of things? Is that fine enough? Can I dump that on you right now?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that.
All
I'm
right.
fine with it.
So, who are you? What do you play? And what's your opinions?
Well, I'm Sheer. I play off tank, mainly Zarya, Sigma, and Hog. And honestly, right now, Overwatch, I feel is in a pretty good state. Just because there's so many options on what you can play without being a meta slave.
Okay. So overall, it's a very positive experience. At least personally, too. I play a lot. Sure, you've been playing quite a bit, too, recently, haven't you? That one period where you had, like, days where you could just grind, correct?
Yeah.
And how was that overall? Were you very successful in it? Was it a struggle? Were there a lot of throwers? What was your general feeling about the players and the environment that you were in during that time?
Well, the players right now are honestly like the best they've been in a very long time, because a lot of people who played the game a long time ago are coming back to the game and getting back into it, and they're not as toxic as previously. So that's a big positive during matches. Like, people are being communicative and all that junk.
So do you think that's a change in the game itself, or do you think it's simply the players maturing?
I feel like that's more of the players maturing than a change of the game, because they've taken a break for a while. and now they're coming back with a fresh mind.
Okay, okay. And do you find that the game has been getting harder? Because personally, I've noticed kind of this lower shift, and my opinion is, and maybe this is more conspiracy theory, is because a lot of the casual players are leaving. The higher end players, they're not going to move anywhere from where they are, right? If you're top 500, you're always going to be top 500 in a way. But I've noticed the lower you go, it still seems like there's a fairly large struggle because you played with us quite a bit. Well, just so you guys know, I'm like average 2800-ish, 29. I bump into diamond every once in a while. So Sheer ends up playing with me and the rest of the group, who tend to be quite a bit lower. Have you noticed like an increase in skill, a decrease in skill? What have you noticed in terms of skill ranges within the game?
It's definitely gotten a lot harder to hard carry in lower elos. Like down in gold and plat, it's definitely gotten a lot harder to be on your own and still win a game.
Is that because of the heroes that people are selecting? Is it better hero composition? Or is it literally just skill? Like, to me personally, I feel like the skill of much lower elo players has increased. Where let's say, if I'm playing in an average gold game, I'm getting slept by Anna's as Tracer. And I don't think I've ever, whenever I used to play in gold, I could fully dominate Anna's, no question, every single time. Is that what you've noticed? Like, so I know I'm kind of loading that question a little bit, as that's my feeling with it. But is it team composition? Is it the hero selection and the maturity of the players that's causing it, and the kind of the ability to flex, or is it kind of what I said, or I don't know. What do you think on that? How is that being squeezed? Where is the skill coming from?
I definitely believe that's because a lot of the casual players are leaving Overwatch to go play like Valorant or something.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, and then it's leaving all the people who are like have a higher mechanical skill, but might not have as much game sense, to kind of dominate in the lower ranks and gain elo.
I think that's definitely it. It seems to be that there's a refinement of players down below. Where somebody, let's say for example, somebody who's in platinum, kind of my range and below-ish. I like to think I'm higher. Well, I'm not going to go into my insecurities on that one, but definitely a lot of people have gotten extremely skilled in the wrong way at the lower elos, and so there seems to be this increase, of course, within skill. Is there something, especially as an off-tank player, is there something that you've been able to exploit within these ranks, within the enemy team, that you would say is almost broken? The thing that players don't seem to focus on specifically that is allowing you to succeed, because you're succeeding quite a bit this season, or at least for the past few seasons. You're at pretty much your career high on average. So is there something that you think that you're doing that other players are not, that you're exploiting?
Okay, so the main thing I'd like to talk about there is the positioning during fights, because before fights, people are usually positioned pretty well, but once the fight breaks out, people start drifting away from their original position,
Okay.
and it just gets easier to catch people out of position and kill them, pick them off easily.
So is that what you're watching for specifically then? Like the fight, from what I get, the fight drags on, and so your plan, or at least your major plan within, especially when you're playing at lower ranks, is to let the enemy team break up first.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Okay. Okay. Is that mostly from like a Zarya perspective, or is that something that you like? Because I know you flex a little bit into other tanks every once in a while. But let's say you're playing Reinhardt, for example. Is that the kind of plan that you think? I know you don't play much Reinhardt, but is that the kind of thing that you think that almost every single player can look at and improve? Because right now, you could imagine that there's lots of healers that are looking at that and going, "Well, I can't jump in. I can't do anything there." Like, do you think that that's something that they can do from their perspective at in a different role in a different area, or is it something that mostly is a tank? Because I know we actually had one player, for example, that helped us out a lot. Absolute unit. I don't know if he ever watches this, but we miss you. It's nice playing with you every once in a while. Where he just ran into the enemy team, broke them up, and killed the thing in the back. Is that a hero specific thing, or is this something that you think that you can implement across all tiers?
That's something you can definitely implement across all tiers, as long as
Or
you
all roles?
like
Sorry.
all roles as
Yep.
well. Like Ana sneaking a nade through, uh, McCree sneaking in that flashbang, you can really do anything with your abilities if you know how to use them and catch people out of position.
Okay. So
That's like positioning is the main way you kill people in lower ranks.
okay. So in terms, let's look at the positioning in terms of tank play, especially because we're going to focus a little bit on tank play here, just because this is kind of Shear's expertise. We will look at all sorts of other stuff as we kind of go along, because Shear does play everything at diamond level, correct? You're diamond across the board.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. So pretty better than me across the board. That's kind of what you got to think about. Now, is there a very specific hero, for example, that you think at the moment is completely broken? Like, is there something, and not even hero you could say, but is there a composition you could say within those things that if you synergize or you work together, or even if you exploit as an individual hero, is there something within the game that you see as fundamentally broken from your perspective?
From my perspective,
Yes.
I think Ball is the most broken hero in the game right now.
Okay, why is that? What are the very specific parts of Ball that you think are broken?
Because Ball is like entirely about getting the enemy team's cooldowns out. And at a lower rank, you are definitely going to force people's cooldowns out. So like your main job as Ball is to either catch people out of position and get kills or disrupt the enemy team. And that's what's happening in like most higher ranks, and it's definitely screwing with all the GM players and Masters players right now.
Okay, so if it is a GM and Masters Ball, they're going to be smashing through. They're going to be fairly successful in the things that they attempt to do. Is that something you're noticing with lower elo balls, or is that I'm trying to get a general range of what the effectiveness is? Because if somebody, let's say in gold, picks up Ball, I obviously if they do play perfectly, they're going to end up winning the game. But is that something that you think that the hero itself is broken, or is it necessarily the play style is broken? Because if you think about Reinhardt in the old days, it didn't matter whether or not you were a really good Reinhardt or a really bad Reinhardt, even Brig, right? The hero itself was broken, but it's the play style that enables certain things. So it seems to me it's more focused on the play style than anything else, correct? Or is that something that I'm looking a bit too
It's
hard
definitely
into?
focused on the play style.
Okay.
Because like you can exist as Ball and not do anything for your team and definitely lose, versus whenever you use a correct play style or any play style at all, that might disrupt the enemy team. It definitely gives you a better chance of winning.
Well, then what do you do when a Ball is on your team? Let's say you're even a lower elo. You're playing, average platinum, where most moderately dedicated players are at the moment. What do you do? Do you pick a hero? What do? You change things up? How do you change your play style up? What is the core thing that you will do when this hero is destroying your team?
The main thing that you'll do when there is a Ball that is like completely wrecking your team is you will ignore him. Ignore him with all of your might, unless there is like no way that you cannot kill him. Everybody has to be shooting him at the same time, which is probably not going to happen in a lower rank because not everyone is as coordinated. But you will definitely want to ignore the Ball because it's his job to move your attention away from the main fight.
Okay, so you think that, let's say I'm an Ana, for example, straight out, right? A ball comes ripping through my team, bounces me back. Is that something I should be turning for and looking at? Or is that something I should maybe take a few shots, attempt to sleep? Or should I completely ignore the sleep altogether? Because you said that you really only want to focus him when you can guarantee the kill. So I imagine there's lots of situations, but what is my general mindset then? Especially if you're a tank player, what is the thing that's gonna help you out the most if a ball comes rolling through your team and your healers are in the back and getting messed up? Do you want them? Do you stop? What I want to get. See, the thing is, really, here I want to get more your perspective because you're saying that this hero is becoming a large issue overall. So if we can break down the different situations a little bit and see what your opinions are on the different situations, maybe we can look at how Ball itself is broken. I don't want to focus too much on Ball. We will skip to other heroes and ask your opinion on those heroes in particular. But looking at the different situations, especially I want to focus mostly from healer because that's Ball's job. Do you want the Ball? Do you want the team to totally ignore the Ball? Is that something that they're capable of doing? Or Again, just give me your perspective. I want you to kind of just blurt out what you think on this, because you probably know
Yeah.
more than I do about it.
Okay. Well, if you can hit the sleep or the stun or anything to like get him away from you, uh, then do it and then refocus back onto the fight. That's like the biggest counter to ball that you can have. And as a tank player, I'm always looking to protect my healer from the ball, like a ball slam, place down a shield, or bubble, or whatever you can do. Hook him, get him away from your healers.
Okay.
But you should still try and ignore him to the best of your ability.
So would that be because of the health? Because they're doing the big nerf coming up, right? There are.
Yeah, like it. I think it already went through actually.
Yeah, it probably did go through. I haven't played much since. I played much ball since, so I don't even know. But that really, do you think that has affected anything? Because I don't know. Have you played much since either two? Like, has that really changed ball's fundamental problem?
It's definitely changed it in the higher tiers because now you can actually use your abilities to focus down the ball without it being a waste.
Okay.
Because before he could just roll through your team and then run away with like 1100 health and not take any damage or give any ult charge to the enemy team because that's just how much health he had. But now, since he can't get that much health anymore, it's worth it to kill the ball and then move in.
I guess, and that makes slams much riskier too. So,
Hmm.
so when we're looking at this, and the reason why I want to bring these kind of things up is because when we're playing a game, we want to look at how, or when we're playing a round of any sort, we want to look at how these small changes change our decisions. Because you could imagine a ball that gets 100 health per player really close to them is much different than a ball that gets 75. It's 75 now, correct? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
75.
75. That may change your decision from everybody focus or everybody ignore the ball to everybody focus the ball. Has that made any difference in it? I imagine it does for stuns, correct? Like if one of your teammates stuns the ball, there's gonna be more of a chance people will jump on it. But now,
Hmm.
like, or in comparison to before, where it was much more likely to be ignored, that seems to be. I don't hear any arguments. So that seems to be quite
Yeah,
on the
that's
money.
that's pretty much what's happening now after the ball changes.
Have you noticed
Uh,
less ball since? Because you haven't played. I don't think you've played much, have you? But
no, I haven't played. I haven't played very much at all.
okay,
But I have noticed, like watching streams and stuff, there's definitely been a lot less ball play. I've seen a lot more Roadhog played,
a lot more.
actually.
Okay, is there a reason for that then? Is that again the hero issue? Because we're jumping over. We can move off of this hero onto Roadhog would be your first mention that you're seeing a lot more. Is that just because of pure damage? Is it because of the ability to hook? What's causing a little bit more Roadhog, or is it just the decrease of Hammond that's causing more Roadhog?
I feel like it's like a double trouble here, where the decrease of Hammond is definitely increasing the playtime of Roadhog,
Okay,
but it's also because Roadhog has like a lot of the capabilities that Hammond has because Roadhog has the pick potential. He's like a very disruptive uh, target
hmm
in the fight, in the mid fight especially, because he can just land a hook and mess up your entire positioning. So
okay. So do you think then ball is still viable even at a lower elo? So if I was trying to pick up and solo carry at some point in time, is that a hero that I'm going to go back to this because we're gonna jump over to Hog and some other heroes here in a second. But in comparison, if I was at a lower elo and I wanted to pick between two heroes to win that game, to specifically go in and go, I'm going to win. Do I want to pick ball now or do I want to pick Hog? I'll give you the two decisions because they're kind of the same as you said.
well, I definitely pick like either one depending on the situation.
Okay.
Uh, like depending on the team composition that you're running and what map you're on. Uh, you'd either choose ball or hog, but definitely ball can be good whenever he's used properly. But roadhog just gets value from existing.
Okay. Okay. So I imagine then if I was a lower elo at some point, I probably would want to stick with Hog just to keep with the consistency with the team for the win condition. And then maybe as I get better, maybe as time goes on, I would focus on something more like Ball. Because I imagine, at least from my perspective, Ball can have more impact than Hog, but it's a lot harder to.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's definitely a big factor.
So now mentioning those two heroes, because we're actually moving off of a double shields meta. And it really, the double shields meta only mattered so much in Diamondish and above. You could say metas matter everywhere, because if you played it properly in a lower elo, you'd be in a higher elo. It's just the way it is. But since you mentioned those two non-shield characters, is there a reason that people are picking those as opposed to going double shields? Is it because people are bored of double shields? Because double shields is no longer effective? Did the nerf work? Why have those been your focus right now, as opposed to going, okay, maybe Sigma's still the problem?
Yeah, I would say that the nerf to both Orisa and Sigma has hit double shield pretty hard
Mm-hmm.
because now Orisa is like, unless you play her perfectly, she is useless, and unless everybody who synergizes with her plays perfectly, she's useless. She gets left out to dry.
Okay.
But also, what's happening right now is that tanks really don't need to tank. They can be DPS if they want to. They can just run around the map and get kills, and that's how you win the game right now.
I've definitely noticed that, where in a lot of my games, 27, 28, 2900, like I've been playing a lot of Zarya, and when I have a Roadhog, I just pick Zarya. When I have a ball, I just pick Zarya. Or I'll pick Hog with the ball, or I'll pick, like, unless my team is absolutely getting destroyed, that seems like the better option. I imagine, like, do you think that's because just independence, because of like falling back to something that does more damage? Or maybe if I'm duoing, would it be more effective for me to run a double shields, even though technically double shields is still kind of meta as is? What's your opinion on that? If we had the choice and we're playing in a game, say 2800-ish, and below, whatever, what would be your decision if we had two tanks? If we're duoing as tanks?
I'd definitely go with the higher damage tank combo
Okay.
because it's just a higher damage output, and double shield really isn't needed right now, especially in the current meta, which is poke.
Okay, so really that depends too on what the DPS are. What would you say the meta DPS are? Being a tank, what are the worst DPS to play against? And not necessarily meta, but what are the worst DPS to play against, do you think? Because I know you can, with some heroes you can counter them. It's not fun to counter, but it's something you can do. Is there DPS that are particularly an issue within this? Because DPS to me at least seem fairly weak.
They definitely do seem weak right now. However, I do believe that Echo is a very, very good DPS right now, even if they're still a little weak, because she can pump out constant damage with her like 6 second cooldown on stickies, and then her try shot, which comes out insanely fast. The burst potential is just crazy with Echo. Another hero that I'd like to talk about would be Ashe.
Okay.
Before the nerf, because she could just burst down your tanks in 2 shots, and that was just insane.
And then
So
post nerf, I guess you haven't played much either. But do you think that would, like, I played a little bit of her, and it doesn't feel like I can do that kind of heavy damage anymore. I know
it definitely feels different
you played
than
some
it used to.
quick play games and a few comps, right? Since the update, like
A couple,
a
yes.
couple. Like I have not been noticing much Ashe recently. Have you played it
It's
Ashe at
definitely
all?
been dialed back. I haven't played Ashe very much recently, but I have seen quite a few like streams and other people playing Ashe in my games,
Okay.
and it definitely doesn't feel as much as an oppression as it used to be.
Well, what do you
Like,
think? What do you think about her alt? Because one of the criticisms I heard early on, which we haven't really seen much, people were complaining about the damage, was her ability to tank as a sniper. So you have this mid-fight tanking ability, which essentially takes over Hammond, right? It's the same thing as, it's almost the same damage as Hammond in a way, and busts in. Is Bob a non-issue in this? Because it seems to me like with the damage nerf, potentially people might be, if they're still playing it, they're playing it more for the ult, less pick potential. Or is that a completely incorrect assumption on my end?
it's definitely going to be more like geared towards alt base, kind of like how Genji was a while ago, where Dragon Blade was the only useful part of his kit.
Because
So
go ahead. Sorry.
Bob's definitely going to become useful if you're actually playing Ash. But there's still a lot of things that can go wrong with Bob, like just missing him, or him getting stunned or slept or killed. There's
So
just a lot of things that can go wrong.
he's just kind of Bob's just kind of a chunky turret, right?
Pretty
There's
much.
been many Torbjorn turret metas in certain maps here and there, and that's kind of what he is. It seems like so Ash overall doesn't seem mega powerful after the nerf, but are you still concerned about her after the nerf? Like, is she still super not independent murderer that she used to be, but is she still something to be watched out for? If I was again lower elo, if I want to, do you think you could pick it up and roll with it, or is it like dead
If
and
you're if you're lower elo, you can definitely pick it up and roll with it because it still is a very high damage output, even without um, the damage boost and being able to one shot squishies.
and I would say her general mobility is fairly, it
Yeah,
adds
with
to
the
that.
coach gun.
So you can
Hmm.
you can move yourself out of harm's way, but like your Widowmaker grapple, you can move yourself up to a very high position. And especially, as you said before, with lower elos and the team fight breaking down and positioning breaking down within the team fight, it definitely might be something to watch out for, especially if you're a DPS and you wanna go and kill stuff. Now,
Can I also talk about like the Widow versus Ash battle right
yeah,
now?
yeah, sure, I'd love to hear that. Let's go ahead.
So with the nerf, Ash is still able to one shot a Widowmaker from her effective range, which is like mid long range, uh, and Widow is still obviously able to one shot an Ash from long range. But the problem during that fight is that you have to actually close the distance as Ash, and when a Widowmaker is holding down an angle really hard against you, it's very difficult to do that.
Did they?
However,
Go
whenever
ahead.
you're
Sorry.
holding an angle, it's definitely all about the angles and positioning. Positioning is the key thing here.
So did they balance that combo with nerfing Ash's damage and nerfing Widow's health? Did they balance it, or is it still completely biased towards the Widow?
I feel like there's still definitely a little bit of bias towards Widowmaker right now
Okay.
because she still has that one shot kill potential, uh, and she still has mobility and like a venom mine that can help you see people through walls. Uh, so
Is Widowmaker, if you consider, let's say, not a meta composition, but a team composition where everybody's working together, is Widowmaker still a problem in that then? Like, is against it uh, if I have a team that's really, we won't even say Ash, we can kind of kick out Ash in that and go whatever DPS, because Widowmaker, as we know, no matter what, will always have like unlimited skill potential. You can just click on a head, no matter squishy.
mhm.
But is that something you think that can be countered now with composition, or is that something that is still like the nerf did nothing and we're
It's definitely something that can be countered by composition because if you just close down the Widow's sightlines, then she can't do anything. Like she's just useless if you close down her sightlines, and that's like the main problem in lower elos. Nobody knows how to do that, so
close?
that's why Widowmakers are like terrorizing gold lobbies and silver lobbies.
Definitely, definitely. Are there any other DPS that we got to worry about other than, I guess, Echo is a big one. Her ult is still super powerful, but it's not worth mentioning because it can be any other ult in the game.
Hmm.
Is there any other DPS in particular? Like, I know we had a problem with Doomfist for a while. He's dead in the water, right? He's gone. Junkrat got a buff a while ago. He's still very situational. Is there anything in particular that you're worried about that may be very low skill but high impact coming out of this?
I'd like to say that McCree is still a very viable hero,
Okay.
even if people say he's dead. Uh, that's just because he gets value by existing. You just have to shoot people.
It's not really existing then, is it? It's
Well,
but
you can feel the pressure from a McCree standing in front of you.
yeah, you really can. You really can. So, like, it seems to me, even with the buff for McCree, like, McCree's utility against a really good team is almost useless. But if you're trying to just brute force your way through the enemy team as a DPS, McCree's still super viable in most
Hmm.
compositions too. Is there anything? I don't know. Just a quick note. We're gonna move on to more healer stuff. But is there anything in particular that McCree probably doesn't do well against, that you wouldn't want to pick the old reliable against? I imagine double shields is probably pretty hard.
Yeah, double shield is definitely going to be hard for a McCree player. And then poke is definitely going to be hard for a
Yeah.
McCree player to play into because they can just surround him. And whenever he doesn't have sight lines on something to shoot at, he just becomes useless.
Okay. Okay. So healers. What do you think about the healers? Is there any healers that we need to worry about? Anything that's starting to appear pretty
Zenyatta.
crazy? Zenyatta. Is it a combination thing? Is that something that other heroes combined with Zenyatta create chaos? Or
It's more just Zenyatta being Zenyatta right now. He does it all. He heals, he does damage, he does even more damage with Discord Orb. People on his team do more damage with Discord Orb. He can output like crazy burst damage at a long range with no damage fall off. It's nuts right now.
so what in your mind started that? What was the key moment in the patches, in
It was
the
definitely
atmosphere?
when Double Shield was nerfed hard.
Okay.
When like Orisa started becoming useless again, and Poke came to light with the new meta, with the long range Zen, with no damage fall off. It just makes it a lot easier to get kills, with the trade off of less healing.
Okay. Okay. So is that a composition thing too? Like against a certain competition, is Zen totally useless? So if let's say I'm a
Oh, of
gold player,
course.
and I see a Zen on the other team, and his Discord is turning our tanks into squishies. Excuse me. Is turning our tanks into squishies and totally destroying us. Do you? What hero would I pick? What tank? Especially you being a tank player. How would I counter Zen? And also, actually, before you say how you would counter, how would you recognize when the Zenyatta is getting ton of value? Because sometimes I know Zenyatta, it's really hard for you to recognize or to see when, how he's doing what he's doing, because he's very off in the distance. So, what situation would I need to switch, and what would I switch to?
When your tanks are getting absolutely dogged on by the other tanks because of the Discord Orb, that's when you know the Zenyatta is getting massive value because he is allowing his tanks to generate more ult charge and generate more damage into the enemy team than your team can do to them because he also has the healing orb on people.
So I'm Reinhardt. We're Reinhardt and Zarya. The enemy Zenyatta is burning our Reinhardt down. As tanks, what do we do?
As tanks, you swap off Ryan Zarya because Ryan Zarya is bad into that, and you turn into a dive hybrid kind of.
Okay.
You still have a front line, and you're still protecting your back line while sending people to deal with the Zenyatta in their back line, while also turning their attention away from your front line to burst through their front line. It's a very complicated process.
So if
and it
I'm
requires a lot of high level execution.
so like if I am Zarya, I would switch to Winston, and we keep the Reinhardt, or would we go for like a Sigma or
I'd go for more of a Sigma personally,
Okay.
like a Sigma Winston, because Sigma does it all still, even with the shield nerf that he just got.
So you're having a dual fight, right? There's gonna be a fight for the front line, but you're distracting the Zenyatta in the back line to the point where he kind of can't do anything, right? He can't reposition his heal orb, can't reposition his damage orb. He's dealing with you in particular, and that's kind of what you're going with there. Okay, okay. Now, is there something
Another
Oh,
way,
go ahead.
another way to counter that would be to have a Zenyatta yourself and burn through them faster than they burn through you.
The regular mirror argument. Is there a healer that will stop that? Is there something kind of healing that will really counter that? So if I'm a healer and I know that their enemy Zenyatta is burning our tanks down, and I already have a Zenyatta on my team, obviously their Zenyatta is getting more value. What do I do? Is there a healer I can pick? Is there a angle I can or not angle, but is there an ability that I can rely on? And we know
There are
this.
two healers. There are two healers that are very good in this situation.
Okay.
There's Baptiste for the burst healing and the immortality field to save your own tanks and the rest of your team
Uh huh.
in high damage situations, and then there's Brig, who just has constant heals all the time.
So I hear that a lot, actually. I hear the Zenyatta Brig combo is a weird one. So why would I?
It's a weird one, but it works really well.
It does. It does. How can you break that down for me a little bit more? Why, if we're picking no healing, like there's no healing, we're getting launched at with Zenyatta from a distance. How does Brig Zenyatta help with it?
So Brig has like the best AoE healing in the game right now, still above Lucio because Lucio is still very bad.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and with a Brig, you can maintain your front line so heavily that you can just out sustain their front line, even with a damage orb on you.
Okay, so why would I pick Brig over? At what situation? Actually, let me rephrase that. If I picked Brig, and we had a Zenyatta on the team, and my whole team, we all know this. If you're below diamond in any way, and you pick the actual meta composition that will work in the situation, and the whole team doesn't know about it, they'll go, "Oh, why did you pick this hero?" And even I will fully admit, sometimes I'm like, "Why did you pick this hero?" And later they go, "It's meta," and then I go, "Well, bullshit," and then later on they go, "Well, I'd see it that it actually is meta." At what point would I go, maybe I should swap off this weird off healer combo? So I have a Zenyatta Brig. What goes on within that? Where would I go? I can't do this anymore.
Like whenever your healing and sustain becomes not enough to like heal through their damage, as Brig, like whenever you're not getting Inspire up most of the time during the fight, and not getting the key stuns in, that's when you should swap.
So if I couldn't get close, right? Like if I felt
Mm-hmm.
like my Zenyatta was firing down range and I was just kind of standing there. And so this is kind of interesting. I want to pull this out a little bit, guys, because looking at it from a perspective of somebody who's 3,700, 3,800-ish, you can see how his perspective is quite a bit different than, let's say, a pro. Because a pro will always say, "Oh, easy, run this, you're good to go. Why don't golds run it? Why don't platinums run it? Why don't diamonds run it? Why don't silvers run it?" Well, you can actually see how, like, the situations, in the majority of situations, it seems, Sheer's option is not the meta option. Or it kind of is the meta option, but it's more of a selfish option, right? You wouldn't go double shields to protect your team. You'd pick some kind of double off-tank composition to go in there. And it's not necessarily because it's better in terms of helping out your team. It's because of the amount of work that you can do as an individual. Now, and I'm trying to point out, too, in many of these situations where you could have a perfect meta, where you are running your Brig. As I was saying, this is kind of more meta, but if you're in a situation where the team feels really wobbly and stuff like that, picking those more, you could say, not selfish healers, but healers that have a lot of utility and a lot of extra things to them, is probably going to be a lot more powerful than having the whole team.
The DLC heroes,
The DLC heroes. rather than picking things that your whole team may think are the absolute perfect, sometimes it's better just to pick what you think is probably the most valuable in that situation, then go with it. Once you get to a higher elo, I imagine that meta, what you're saying, those solutions start to break down a little bit, and you either have to go it or you lose, correct? Or is that
that's pretty much what happens up in like GM and top 500. If you're not mirroring the enemy team, you're not going to win.
Okay, so are you noticing yourself, especially as you're starting to peak up to that top 500-ish rank, and you're getting pretty close. Like, High Masters is actually a lot closer than a lot of these pros like to say, because they have hundreds of people below them, to that point, but you got to think of that thousands, hundreds of thousands of people below that, right? So when you get to that point, are you being forced off of your hero? Or actually, let me rephrase that question, because I mumbled around it a little bit too much. Are you finding that at a certain rank, you're being forced to switch into a meta? Or are you finding that your independent value play is more valuable or works more overall?
There's definitely a point where it just shifts from individual play to becoming a meta slave.
Okay. What rank would you say that is? Sorry if I'm interrupting.
I'd say that's around high diamond. That's when it starts. That's when the shift starts. Because you start like losing games when you're trying to solo carry, because you're not working with your team enough.
and not enough team synergy. Now, we've all seen the streamers that get to top 500 playing Torbjorn, and Torbjorn only. Is that because of their exceptional skill? Then it seems like
That's their skill, their execution, just pretty much every fundamental of playing Overwatch, they are the best at it.
they are understanding it better than everyone else. So even if they do come up against a situation where the enemy team has countered them mechanically, like we've seen them give up, which I always find really interesting. When someone's not playing meta, they kind of give up. Now, are you and you know this too, when the game's like, this is lost, right? Are you depending upon are you completely giving up on the next game or giving up on this game, waiting for the next game in terms of still putting in your maximum value in this game, but you're assuming that it's probably lost? Or are you just going, GG, go next, we're doing bad?
I'm definitely still putting in my maximum effort that I can and getting the most value. I'm like doing my best to get the best value I can. But that's just me. And sometimes people in the middle of a game will just give up and start picking, Symmetra and then TPing themselves off of a cliff.
And so let me rephrase that, though, because I realized that was a kind of a weird question. Do you believe that in games that seem lost, trying harder as your hero and playing better as your hero will result in a win, and can result in a win at this moment?
It can.
Let me just add a little bit more onto that. Sorry.
Okay.
Because there are some stages in the meta where, let's say we had the GOATS meta, where that was not possible. You cannot play better if your Zarya is throwing, right? It's a very big change from where at least I feel that we are now. Because if the meta is starting to get stale and we're starting to get forced into certain things, you kind of feel like you can't do anything. Even once you start getting to the higher tiers of things, you feel like you can't do anything. And I know that's why Siegel released his hour and something long video quite a while ago going, if your team's not doing well at a certain rank, it's almost impossible to get over that hump. Are you still feeling that? Especially, I know obviously once you get to a high, like top 500, it's going to be pure refinement. But are you still feeling that pressure to play that you're going to lose if somebody's throwing, or do you still feel like that's possible in many of your games from just skill-wise?
I definitely feel like it's definitely a lot harder if someone starts throwing.
Okay.
Or when even if they're just soft throwing, like they're just not as good as they should be, like a lower elo and a higher elo game.
Mm-hmm. It's hard, but I don't know. Does that feel like it's a guaranteed loss in many situations?
Most of the time it is a pretty much guaranteed loss because there's someone who might not be playing there's someone who's not playing their best on your team, and it just they don't sync up with you at all. It's like playing a player down most of the time.
And you have
to make up for that.
At what rank do you feel like that no longer matters? Do you feel like your effort will overwhelm the enemy based off of your skill?
That's the cutoff for that is probably around low platinum.
Okay.
Putting in maximum effort and getting maximum value with a player down, you can still win. Mm-hmm. Heck, I've done it with 4 people on my team. It was a 4v6 and we won.
I've noticed that before too, where the individual skill, and to me about 2700 is where it starts to get hard. Now, I remember very clearly watching a Bronze to GM a while ago, and someone asked on chat, this GM was like, they're like, when do you have to start paying attention? And he's like, around 2600. Does that feel quite correct to you? Does that feel like the same?
Yeah, that feels about when you have to start paying attention to what you're doing in the game rather than kind of just existing as your hero.
And there's existing below it, you can easily hard carry over, because that's the way I feel too. Personally, I feel, and again, being in my high plat range, when I'm below 2600, I can just brute force my way through the enemy team. There's no. And brute force just through the refinement of the individual hero. It doesn't matter what hero I'm playing, as long as I highly refine it, then that's a-okay. Once you start going over that window of opportunity right now is closing. But I also feel, and this is more of a question to you too, Sheer, I feel that window at the moment with the current meta is fairly large. You can, at the moment, as long as you're playing your hero to your best and you're playing it to the advantage of the map, the win is possible in the majority of ranks. And that's to me what matters. Is that the same? Is that your same experience?
Yeah, I feel that as well, because you can definitely get a lot of value, and still like make up for another person's value who might not be playing their best, uh, in a lot of ranks right now because of the current meta and whatever hero you're playing, even if it's not meta.
Awesome. So we'll kind of wrap this up here because we've gone over almost like every little topic, not every hero. We're not going to spend hours here going over it, but we're going to try and focus. And I am going to bring on more people again. Mostly, I think we're going to go with the supporters. I'm going to go through all of our Patreon supporters, interview everybody, look at their perspective on the meta, look at their perspective on the certain fights, and we'll actually take a look across the different interviews, you could say, podcast interviews, and see where everybody is kind of matching up, and hopefully we'll find some sort of understanding within it. Now, you've mentioned this before, it's a pretty good meta right now. Things are pretty good, people are pretty positive. Is this the best Overwatch has ever been to you, or has there been a better time?
Honestly, right now, this is probably the best Overwatch has ever felt to me personally, as a tank player, because tanks are kind of the best things in the game right now. There is still a couple things wrong with it. Like I don't really like the flex roll in competitive.
Agreed.
It just makes like people do flex, get the priority pass by AFKing and spawn, and it just doesn't feel earned at all.
Okay.
So
really, it's not inside the game that's the problem. Is there's kind of external factors that are making things a little bit weird right now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there one thing? If you had one thing to tell Blizzard, so if we manage to drag in a Blizzard employee one day to one of these podcasts, what would be the one thing that you would like to tell them about Overwatch? Can be advice, can be just you love about it, could be a complaint, could be anything. What would you tell Jeff Kaplan if he was in here today?
I'd like to tell him that I love how he listens to his community and what they want in Overwatch. He definitely listens to the higher elo players more. Like definitely, he listens to the pros more than the average player base. But our voices are still heard, and is still taken into account when rolling in new patches and stuff.
That's funny because that is the opposite of what a lot of people are saying, but I believe the same thing too. I think they've been very, very good at listening to feedback. The problem is they're always only with two hands. They go pros and then they go casuals, and they go pros and they go casuals, and they've done an excellent job of building a game that works with both of them. But the thing is, like, obviously on both ends, it's not always perfect. But you do agree, like, it seems like they have listened to the general consensus, and they have found a very good mid ground between
Professional play,
unfun professional play and fun play. Like the difference between going to the pro leagues in football and just grabbing a ball and going out with your friends and having one of your friends who's really good at it, and you guys are all trying hard and having fun and playing, right? Like there seems to be a good balance in that.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a better balance than there has been before, like in the past.
That's awesome. I love to hear that because that is what I think too. Some things have been frustrating in the past. Some things have been really annoying. But as usual, it's the people who just walk past the annoying thing and continue to play and continue to work through it that succeed, that get the higher ranks. But overall, if you understand the game, it seems, as we have here, somebody who's fairly high elo, who has a fairly deep understanding of the game, feels like it's good. And I personally feel like it's good. I can say that over and over again, but it's a very good feeling to hear. All right, Sheer. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been the very first ScrubCast podcast. Hopefully you guys liked it. If you're on the stream, give it a thumbs up. Give me a subscribe, whatever. I'm not going to go over the whole thing because you guys know what to do. It doesn't matter even if you're on DLive, whatever, blah, 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 blah. This will be going up as a full podcast thing-majiggy once I figure out how to put it together properly. And I hope to do more of them. Like I say, we will be putting together things with the Patreon supporters, especially talking to each Patreon supporter at their levels of Overwatch skill and their amount of play that they do. Some people we have that come in fairly casually every once in a while and love the game, but they only play it a few times a week or a few times a month even. And so I'd still love to get their perspective as the casuals versus the people who are real tryhards and they may be mid-average elo, but they're playing a lot of it. So we can take a look at what's not fun for them, what's fun for them, what seems overpowered, and again, we can find some kind of community's consensus on this, and hopefully, I don't know, go somewhere with it. You know, who knows? We'll see. So again, thank you so much here, and my name is Sulack. Have fun out there, guys.